why aren't people able to figure this out on their own?
Why do people have personal trainers? I know how to lift weights. I know how to do deep knee bends, curls. I know how to do all that. Why do I need? Well, because sometimes you need, I call it a positive trap, right? You need a positive trap, which, coaching does, right? Yeah. Knowing that if you are going to have a coaching session with me every third Thursday at 9 a.m., that's a positive trap, because you know what's going to happen? The stuff's going to get done. That's what's going to happen. And you either want to do everything you can to get that done, or you don't. And the do-it-yourself plan is fine. But I think in general, whether it be me trying to screw up, fix my house on the do-it-yourself plan, or someone trying to do this, you can't see yourself in the mirror, in business. You probably have a pretty good sense of things, but you have a warped sense of things because it's personal.
Welcome, everybody. Today, I have a guest that actually our work is so in some ways similar, it's kind of scary. So I guess if I compliment him, it's complimenting me. Maybe that's a little arrogant. But when I saw Jim's stuff and what he's up to with Half Retire, I was really, in a good way, blown away by what he's doing and how he's helping people. And so I'm excited to share that with you today. Like most entrepreneurs, Jim Muehlhausen has an eclectic background ranging from a CPA, franchisee, attorney, business owner, consultant, franchisor, public speaker, university professor, and book author. He's previously written two well-regarded books, The 51 Fatal Business Errors and How to Avoid Them, and Business Models for Dummies, and has contributed to the publications such as The Small Business Report, Entrepreneur, BusinessWeek, and various business journals. Jim has now turned his attention to the problems facing aging business owners by studying thousands of business owners, collecting their best practices, and augmenting them. Jim created the Half Retire Blueprint. This step-by-step process helped business owners create a more profitable alternative to selling their businesses via half retirement. This trademark system is outlined in his book, Half Retire, Keep Your Business, Ditch the Stress. And like I said, I just brought him on and wanted to share his insights with you, because when he suggested and reached out to me that he'd come on the show, and I checked out his work, which I always do, I was really impressed by what he's doing. So Jim, welcome to the show. I'm already grateful for the work you're doing, and thank you for coming to join us.
Oh, great to be here, Wade. Thanks.
Awesome. So what I wanted to do is, your list, it feels like sometimes when I struggle, and you just saw me struggle through, by the way, in case you had noticed, I edited this like 4 times as I read his list of things. There's a lot that he's done. And like a lot of entrepreneurs, we sometimes do different things, we try different things, and then sometimes you find these common threads. One of the things that I'm excited to get your feedback on, Jim, is why is it that some people would fear retiring? I mean, because isn't the whole goal to retire? So you're telling me, I mean, this, for those listening, yes, this is true. This guy's helping people slow down retirement when maybe they could retire or maybe they couldn't. Tell me a little bit about that. Why would somebody want to half retire as opposed to do it all the way?
Well, there certainly are people that want to do it all the way. They've got $10 million in the bank, and I've seen people walk away from a business that they have, enough in the bank that they just go, I just don't want to do this anymore, and throw the keys at an employee, and maybe they will take it over, and maybe they won't, or they just lock the door for the last time and walk away. And that's a luxury that not every business owner has, which is part of that half retired group, that I literally cannot afford, or I don't want to give up so much of my lifestyle that I can afford to lose this very nice stream of income that I've built, but it comes with this hairball of stress that I don't like. And so that's what we focus on is, okay, wouldn't you keep that income versus sell it if you didn't have all that stress? The group that you're talking about, I think, is a little bit smaller group. Let's call it 75-25. They don't necessarily need any kind of money injection, or they're financially, they're fine, but they're concerned. What exactly is it that I'm going to do? All my social connections flow from my business friends, my employees are like part of the family now. This is where I get my social needs met. It's Maslowian. Here's a direct quote from one of our half retirees. He said, and he's set financially. And so he said, I realized that as I get into this and I've cut my work schedule, that I enjoy coming to work and working on a lot of the things that I do. It just wasn't all of it. And sometimes it's hard to see that when we're so busy and we're younger and we're going 100 miles an hour. It just all needs to get done, and we just do it. That's what entrepreneurs do. You just do the work that's in front of you. Well, all of a sudden you start getting a little bit older and you start going, I'm getting too old for this blankety blank. And you want to get rid of some of the stuff that's garbage, that you're going, okay, I don't want to be doing this, but I can't figure out how to do it. It's like playing catch with yourself, right? You throw the ball, but there's nobody there to catch it. You want to get rid of it. We'll call that the delegation analogy, right? I want to throw the ball, but there's nobody there. But to your question, I think that you've got perks that go with the business. You know, you've got a company car, you've got a country club membership, you've got sports tickets, you've got things that are tied to that. You've got your social connections, and you've got something meaningful to do when you get up in the morning. And awesome. Not everybody likes to travel. Not everybody likes to play golf, 4 days a week.
Yeah, and that's something that I find is the thread. There's certain commonalities, and you and I are targeting a slightly different group, though, with similar ideas. And again, it was almost a little creepy when I went to one of your parts of your site where you had your spreadsheets laid out. I'm like, wait, did I do these in my sleep? Because sometimes I go back when you do enough spreadsheets after a while, I'll dig up something and realize, oh, wow, I created that, and it'll remember it. So it's kind of like, for some people, family pictures is like spreadsheets for me. And yours was so similar. I was like, no, I don't think I did that. I said, okay, it's on his side. I probably didn't do it. But one of the things that I find that people struggle with, it's what you said is, what part do I do? So I was just talking to somebody on a call earlier today, and this person was asking me, he said, well, what is it that the people you work with, what do they struggle with? And the way I explained it was, they're very often doing 10 things. And when they do these 10 things, everything works. But first of all, they don't like doing all 10 things. And they also don't know which of those 10 things are causing the success. So they kind of get nervous because they say, okay, it almost becomes like a voodoo, or like watching a sports game and sitting in the same chair and wearing the same hat and not changing your underwear or whatever it is that we as men do. It's kind of stupid, but it's just one of those things that the person says, okay, I don't know what I can give up. I certainly know what I don't like. So say, let's start there. And that might be important or might not be important. How do you help a person sort of go through that? Because I saw your process and the implications of it. It seemed to me that that was a huge part of it. In fact, I think you outlined a few stages where you kind of go for some of the low-hanging fruit first to give this person confidence, because this person might have built a business 10, 20, 30 years, and cut anything you want, you're still some outside guy, some X factor, some variable that's suggesting that this person tinker with something. And most entrepreneurs, we don't like to break stuff if it's not broken. Well, if it's that part that provides for our livelihood, maybe other stuff, sure. How do you help them perhaps systematically go through that, and where do you start that conversation?
All right, so now we've got 3 bullets. I had 2 bullets a minute ago, and then you just added a third.
Sorry about that.
So there's this 6-step process, and obviously it's outlined in the book. You can find that there's a blueprint on the website that you can download for free as well on halfretire.com. But what you're alluding to in the third one is what I call the magnet. And yes, me, you, every business owner walking the planet does not want to screw up their business. And anything that is tinkering, it's like, I remember back in the old days when cars needed tune-up, and I had a Honda that was running well, but it hit like 90,000 miles, and I had the great idea to tune it up. And it ran worse. It ran worse after I tuned this car up that had never had the spark plugs changed. Then I owned an auto repair shop. This was not a problem deal, but I ruined the car by tuning it up. And that's the way we feel about our business too, right? Don't mess with it if it's working okay. But here's the problem. I'm going to be 1 day older tomorrow, as are you. And eventually those 365 start adding up, and we start hitting milestones. And it's like, okay, I do know one thing. I will not do this forever. I don't know whether it's 1 more minute or 50 years, but I'm not going to do this forever. And at some point, something is going to have to change, whether it be physically, mentally. I've got a large group of clients that are really struggling with what I'm going to call not caring. I have a different name for it that I wouldn't use if we were not recording, okay? But they're just like, I just don't care. It's like, I used to care about this. I know it's important to my business. I just can't muster up the energy to give a hoot about this. And it's like, where did that come from? When you're 45, that never happens. But when you're 55, 60, 65, all of a sudden you're trying to muster up 30 years of caring, about something that is probably menial. My point is that's step one in our process that we call a magnet. You have to have a reason that you want to have retire. And if you don't have a reason, you're going to end up exactly where you said. I don't want to change.
Right there. Let's unpack that real quick, because that's something I've told people. Say, look, if you can't come up with what you want to do on Friday, to use the 4-day work week now for a slightly different, and of course you can combine the two, but if you can't figure out what you want to do on Friday, if your work life is more interesting than your personal life, to put it real simply, well, you're not going to try to work a 4-day work week. And I'm not here to sell to say everybody should, but a lot of people don't have an awesome personal life. And a lot of the times it's nothing fancy. It's not deep psychology. They haven't planned an awesome personal life. They've planned an awesome business or an awesome career, and they've put their energy there. They've put it into their workouts or achievement or different things. And they don't have achievement set as a goal. Like one of my coaches says, there's certain people that if you tell them to stop and smell the roses, they're going to win first prize at smelling roses. That's just, everything is, a competition or an objective or something like that. And I think there's that idea that, yes, you've got to be moving towards something that's more exciting or inspiring. That's why you started a business as opposed to working from somebody. That's why you worked for somebody instead of sitting on the couch. There's always something that's got to be more engaging or more exciting, or perhaps more fearful if it's paying bills or whatnot. But, the people you're talking about are more in that stage where there's a little more choice. As you said, yeah, if I could keep my same lifestyle, I might retire, or maybe not. So as they get clear about that, how do you help? Because this is such a huge piece. What do you do when you find that person doesn't have something that they're in contact with, or they're connected to a great reason why? Can many of them remedy that, or do you find that that's kind of it is what it is? How do you address that with them, or what do you do with that?
No, I don't believe it is what it is. I think sometimes you can get frustrated with a client. I'm sure you've had it happen too, where it's just going to land in that way. And it's because they just don't want to explore it. So one of the things that we do is this exercise we call Dare to Dream. And it's what you're describing, right? I'm as guilty of it as they are. I won't let myself think, what if I took every Friday off? Or what if I took a month off and traveled around the world? I just won't let myself go there. As I get older, I get better at doing it. And I've got a client that takes every Friday afternoon off and goes to the movies with his 30-year-old son. That's what they do together. He doesn't care. He'll go see a Disney movie. He doesn't care. Okay. But he's going to knock off at noon, go to lunch, and go to the movies every Friday afternoon. And, God bless him, right? He's got a great business. He does well. It hasn't hurt him at all, but he's deepened his relationship with his son because he's just putting in the time, and he's smart enough to do that. But I think that the first thing that we have to do is just give ourselves permission to say, what if? And then all of a sudden they're going to come up with the stuff that you're talking about or that I'm talking about. And I think it's got to be pull, not push is what we're talking about. Okay. You can't be, come on, or your spouse is nagging at you or whatever. It can't be a push. It's got to be a pull. And that's why I call it a magnet. And I think you and I are philosophically on the same page, but they've got to have a strong reason that will motivate them to be willing to tinker with those spark plugs that I was talking about before, which leads me to point number 2. Can we move on to point number 2? Which is, you were talking about the 10 things, and I completely agree with you. It's like tying a tie or putting on makeup without a mirror. Okay. It doesn't have to do with your tie tying ability. A mirror is a tool that will help you do it better because you can see yourself now. And in your business, you can't always see what the valuable work that you do is. You're probably half right? You also, I see people thinking things are not valuable that are, things that aren't valuable that are, you name it. And it's because they're guessing at their own stuff. The doctor on their own family, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
An outside party makes a huge difference. But the other thing that you said that struck a chord with me is that they have these 10 things that they do. And that's where we dig pretty deep into this, in that I don't think it's 10 things. I think it's 110 things. And that what they have is 10 hairballs of 25 things all wound together, okay? And we always say you can't delegate the hairball. And every business owner in the world has this, where it's just this mess of stuff that is 30 things, And we don't even use the word delegate for this reason, because if it was delegable work, they would have done it. They know what delegation is.
Yep.
They've read a couple of books on it. They understand the benefits. Yet why have smart, hardworking people not been able to delegate? Because it's impossible. That's why. That it is impossible to delegate the hairball. You got to untangle it and get down to what we call your Picasso work. And your Picasso work is that special genius that you probably like doing, adds a lot of value, enables you to do a 4-day work week, or half retire like we're talking about. If you only do your Picasso work, you're adding tons of value. You probably like it because you're good at it. Business needs it from you, but it's not laden with BS like the hairball.
So yeah, so that's something that I find, I use a different word, use a hairball. I say, there's laser-like delegation and there's scud delegation. And I'm so good at scud delegation. And it's a horrible skill, by the way. It's where you just say, I just want to deal with this nonsense. And I'm going to find somebody whose title or something somewhat aligns with this. I'm probably going to end up blaming them later and saying that they couldn't do a good job at it. And I'll later, put it on them. And yet what needed to happen is there's certain things I needed to unpack and help them with. So my parents are now moving out of the house that they've had for 40 years. Well, they've actually been living in a different house for a while, but they're finally selling the old house. And my brother and sister and I have gone and been helping them to unpack the garage. And there's the garage and the attic and the old trophies and all this stuff my parents have kept. And to your point, there's certain things. Now we can help them, we can lift things, and some of the stuff is ours, but so much of it is we don't have the expertise to know, because we do care about, them and what's going on, to just throw stuff away. There's certain things we know, but they need to, at least in some way, and it is an emotional thing to a certain degree, be willing to say, okay, yeah, that we're going to let go of, that we're not sure, that we're going to hold on to for a while. And maybe some of it will take up space for a while and then eventually we'll let go of it. But there are certain things you can't delegate until you at least come up with a system, do something different than what you've been doing, because again, it's important. As you've mentioned, there's certainly stuff that's easy to delegate. Somebody already has a title. You say somebody mows lawns. Well, that's an easy one. Okay, people mow lawns. Great. Have the person mow the lawn. Or other jobs within a business that are so clearly defined, a receptionist or certain things, a social media manager, where it fits into this nice, pretty box. But a lot of people struggle with the things that perhaps they aren't as clear about. And sometimes those things, correct me if I'm wrong, in your experience, sometimes some of those things that are the hairballs do have a little bit of the genius work in there, or at least a little bit of perspective that the newbie who just walked in the door can't provide. So I find a lot of times the people I work with do have at least a gut sense of, okay, I don't know why, but I've not just given that away. And whereas sometimes, as you said, they'll think one thing works and it doesn't, and vice versa. As I joke with some of my clients, they think their clients buy stuff for them because of their cheesy 1980s sales word tracks, and yet the client buys from them because they can tell that they care. And yet they're still working on the word tracks. I'm like, no, it's because you know your process and you studied and you've been doing this for 50 years. But what are the things, how do you find that you help a person then think through that mess? How do they unpack that in a way that is beneficial to them? Because again, if they do throw out something that they shouldn't have, now we get back to that tinkering. We might have accidentally caused some undue harm. And I know that for you and I, that's one of the toughest things as an outside consultant, when you know enough to be helpful, but perhaps you don't know quite enough of even the things that the client's not telling you, kind of like the doctor, the things that the client doesn't tell the doctor, that you're thinking, okay, what else is going on here that I'm not seeing that's still in play, or that the client, it's not that they're withholding, they might not even be aware of. It might be beyond what they're seeing. And yet, if we want to help them, we've got to make sure we don't miss that. How do you address that?
Well, yeah, and I want to back up to something you said that I think is absolutely true, and that is every hairball has Picasso work. That's why it's undelegable. It is the Picasso work that makes it undelegable. That's why they haven't done it, not because they're stupid or they're control freaks or all the things that people accuse them of, right? Well, you need to become a better delegator, Bob. And it's like, well, Bob's not stupid. Bob's not delegating for a reason. It's because Bob hasn't figured out how to untake, he's going to have to do the Picasso work. Now this is our thesis, but it is undelegable work. No one else can be Picasso painting the $1 million painting. It's undelegable. And we all have that, and our business needs it from us. But we sometimes call it 98-2 delegation, meaning Picasso works about 2% of what we do. The other 98, in theory, is all, we break it into 5 phases. There's, like you talked about, there's an easy phase usually. that can happen, and you can get rid of, I remember we lopped 20 hours off of a guy's time with one phone call. Okay, is that a dumb guy? The guy with a master's degree is a smart guy. Can't see his own stuff. He needs a mirror. And well, what about this? What about this? You play around and you get the answer. But when someone, what we find, so step 2 of our process is actually what we call mindset. And notice I'm not trying to fix anything yet. The stuff that we're talking about, step 3. So we won't even go to step 3. And the surprising part about writing the book for me was I realized there was some mindset work that needed to be in it. And then as I'm writing this book, my appreciation for the mindset work kept growing. And it keeps growing, because without that mindset changing to the mindset of a half-retired business owner, none of this stuff is going to work.
Yeah, and I think so many people miss that, because especially if you've been around, I mean, shoot, I've been in the business world since the late 80s. And if you've even been around anything around vision or mission, now it's called your why. It's been called something for decades, and I'm sure it was probably done hundreds of years ago. There becomes this fear of, oh gosh, if the consultant, definite label, stereotype, outside coach, talks too much about philosophy, mindset, oh God, there's going to be no substance. So sometimes as coaches or consultants, we have this knee-jerk response. Okay, well, I'm going to come in with all the tactics and I'm going to show you every single tool. But as you and I both know, if they're not ready for the tool, if they don't want the tool, if they don't understand how to use the tool, it doesn't matter, because you probably run this. I run into more entrepreneurs who will write the check to delegate in a heartbeat. Boom, here's the check. And some of the most dangerous clients for me to take on is the person who won't do the work, but wants to write me a good check. And it can be a 4-figure, 5-figure or greater check, but they just want to, they're hoping. And I'm like, okay, well, that's if that's a done for you, that's a very different commitment. And that's usually why they're willing to write a bigger check. They're not write a 5-figure or greater check for a book. They're willing to do it for, oh, here, you do this. And then there almost becomes that entitlement. If I wrote you a big enough check, so now you're supposed to deal. And you're like, no. I'm a consultant. I don't work for you. I work with you. But to your point, if they haven't gotten a sense of what that mindset is, or that ultimately, yes, something needs to change. And that's where you can, I don't know about you, I sometimes run up against a little bit of the ego can very subtly come out. And usually it's kind of gentle. And you don't want to do the whole thing where you say, well, you called me, right? Because that's why we're talking, kind of a thing. But in somewhere, there's got to be a willingness for them to do something slightly differently. Like you said, before you can get on to that unpacking the hairball or taking things out. How do you know when a person has absorbed the mindset? How do you know when they're ready?
I don't know. Well, I mean, you're going to see it play out in things working instead of not working.
Okay.
That's the easiest way. Like, let me give you a simple one. So we actually talk about remapping them, because, and maybe I just like to break things down. But to me, it's not just, oh, hey, here's some mindsets, adopt them. You go, okay, this is a problem mindset. So for instance, I'm going to call it, I'm not even going to call it perfectionism, because I think that's got a bunch of stuff attached to it that I don't necessarily mean. I'm going to call it getting stuff done the way I like it done, because that's not necessarily perfectionism, okay? Versus pragmatism over here. You will need to remap that mindset. We have a little saying, you can get things done the way you like them done, or you can half retire. Those are your options. There is no C option called, I want it to, so you're not going to be there 40 hours. You're not going to have your eyeballs on the business anymore. You're not going to be involved in the process anymore. That's all good, right? But now you can't just take a result that is satisfactory or better. You have to have it done the way you want it done, which is fine if you're there all the time. But those two don't peacefully coexist. And that is not a process issue. That is not that is nothing but a mindset. And I've seen it where all of a sudden they go, oh crap, he's right. And then they snap that mindset, and then they start looking at it from that mindset, and all these things domino. That's how the guy gets 20 hours back, because he starts going, oh, he changes 5 mindsets. There's, I don't know, we've got 30, 35 mindsets that potentially could be remapped to half retire mindsets. So you start finding 5 problem ones. Some people, it's a light switch. It's just simple. It can be fast. It doesn't need to be a process. he renounced 5 mindsets, and all of a sudden he's looking at his business completely differently. And he is like, holy cow, I can trim 20 hours a week off my calendar.
Awesome. And it's funny you say something, because I've explained to some of my clients this way. I work with a lot of clients who are insurance agency owners, and their business model is just the quintessential renewal business model, residual income, whatever word you want to call it. And so a lot of them, to your point, when they start pulling back on the hours, they have what I kind of call the king syndrome. And usually it is a male affliction. So I guess I'm a male, I can be mean towards males. It's this thing of, well, it's going to be done the way I want it to be done. And I've explained it to them a different way. And it's almost the counterpoint, or the other side of what you're saying is, there is a certain emotional right that people will give you when you are in the trenches with them in the office 40 hours a week, and you emotionally have less rights when you're there 8 to 10 hours a week. You're still the boss, you still write the checks, and you can still fire people, but you don't get the same level of, oh, we've got to make sure this is so awesome for you, because there's still that part that says, well, he's not here all the time, or she's not here all the time. And so I'm going to do this the best way I can, to your point. And when this person, who's only working 10 hours a week, as far as I can tell, comes in and starts yapping up about their way, man, the highway looks really good. And so I think that's also the part where people have to, it's a maturity thing. You don't get to do everything. It's that old story of what the boat or the ship captain that's going back and forth and talking to somebody on the other side. He says, well, you need to go left. And he sees a light, and there's, east or whatever it is. You need to go, you need to turn. And the person says, well, no, I don't. And the captain says, well, I'm a lieutenant or a general, whatever it is. And the person says, well, I'm simply a seaman. He's like, well, I outrank you. He says, I'm a blah, blah, blah ship. He says, I'm a lighthouse. What are you going to do, man? I'm a lighthouse. You figure out what you want to do with that information. I'm not going anywhere. You're going to have to adjust. And I think that's one of the few ego things that I think sometimes gets people, that and the castle syndrome, when they're used to the big castle of 20 employees, and now they've got to admit that there's only 10 employees, to do this sort of a thing sometimes because they can't keep up with the growth. Just that little bit of letting go to say, okay, this is something different. And it doesn't have to be necessarily smaller, but like you say, a little more of that, whether it's humility, acknowledgement of mortality, of life, of just reality, that no, you don't, if Michael Jordan could still do what he could do, he'd still be in the league. He can't. It's not that all of a sudden he didn't want to share. You think any of the top athletes in the world want to share the stage? No, it's father time. You don't, that happens. So I could see where, and I had never thought of it this way, but you identifying the specific, issues or, however you worded them, to say, this is this problem, this specific way of thinking that's hurting you, to be able to identify them. So you said you guys have, I guess, kind of named them and put kind of a sense of what they are and listed quite a few of them.
Well, I'm sure you could make the list and probably get 70% of it if I gave you 10 minutes, because you've seen the same things that I've seen, right? Perfectionism, or unwillingness to. Sometimes it's trust, right? Now, there's good reasons to trust people, and there's good reasons to not trust people. Trust isn't always. I think entrepreneurs get very unfairly criticized for not trusting their people. And from what I've seen, I've had lots of employees in my life, which is my manufacturing company that you mentioned. I had 50, 60 people, and I had plenty of people to take care of things and also drop the ball in a spectacular fashion on me. Over the years, fired more people than most. We had a unique workforce, let's call it. But I think that the other thing, I think there's 2 points that are tied to what you said. Point number 1 is they need to remember all of the good stuff that comes with 4 days a week, half retirement, okay? And I have people that struggle, which is point 2, is I call it wanting them to want what you want them to want. That's a lot of wants, okay? But you do know what I'm talking about, right? It's like, oh, you mean your people aren't excited that you're only coming in 2 half days a week now? What a surprise. Holy cow. Oh, you mean they're not 100% behind you keeping all your money and not being there at all? It's not going to happen. What you need for them to do is do their job so you can say half retired. That's what you need. Maybe that falls under pragmatism. Maybe I'm just a pragmatist and all the rest is just a
No, it's funny you say that. How many of them say, like, I want them to want me to be in Tahiti while they're in the office. I'm like, dude, seriously? And again, a lot of this is a male affliction.
So this, I've spent 35 years building this. Don't they know how hard I've worked?
Blah, blah. And again, they're like, blah, 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 old man. Like, don't, you know, I've got bills to pay. I've just seen some of them like, well, you know, wait, did you know my taxes were this much this year? I'm like, your taxes are more than some of your team members. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you're not going to get, you know, you're not going to get sympathy for them when your taxes are more than you pay them. And again, no moral judgment, but check in a little bit. So yes, there's a little bit of that la la land. Question for you, and I'm going to pause a little bit, and what I think we'll still come back to your steps with, why aren't people able to figure this out on their own? Because everything you've said to me so far makes sense. So if, again, I'm thinking of, you and I have done this for a while in different forms and fashions. And if somebody's even on this who's in the consulting field or is an entrepreneur and say, wait, this is so easy, or Jim, this is so easy. Why don't they figure this out?
Why do people have personal trainers? I know how to lift weights. You know, I know how to do deep knee bends, curls. I know how to do all that. Why do I need? Well, because sometimes you need, I call it a positive trap, right? You need a positive trap, which, you know, coaching does, right? Yeah. Knowing that if you are going to have a coaching session with me every third Thursday at 9 a.m., that's a positive trap, because you know what's going to happen? The stuff's going to get done. That's what's going to happen. And you either want to do everything you can to get that done, or you don't. And the do-it-yourself plan is fine. But I think in general, whether it be me trying to screw up, fix my house on the do-it-yourself plan, or someone trying to do this, you can't see yourself in the mirror, you know, in business. You know, you probably have a pretty good sense of thing, but you have a warped sense of thing because it's personal, right? You also can't hold yourself accountable, in my opinion. We deal with a lot of type A's, a lot of hard chargers, and a lot of people that get a lot of stuff done, and they're very self-motivated. By the same token, if they really, accountability is doing something you don't want to do. And every single person that I just described, if they don't want to do it, is going to go, I ain't going to do it.
Can't tell me what to do.
Accountability is pushing past that, and that takes a disinterested third party. Not your spouse, not your brother, not your best friend. Somebody who cares about you, but enough to kick you in the knee if that's what you need. Okay? So the reason that this stuff, you know, won't work as well on your own, even if you read the book, I'll give you the whole blueprint in the book. You can even download it on the website. You can do all that. But, you know, we've got a robust training program we put people through. We haven't even covered the most robust part, which is, you know, the part about doing all the work of going through that process of realigning the business for half retirement. Forget them. You know, the first two steps that we've talked about are fairly quick. It's the third, fourth, fifth, sixth steps that take a little bit longer. So I don't know that I know the answer to that. I certainly have had people who have done miraculous things on their own, but I think that most mortals probably would just do better. I don't know what people say to you, but what people say to me is, I know I need a coach. I know I need somebody.
It's something similar. And you know, it's like anything else. I tell my kids are gifted in different ways. You know, I in school was intellectually gifted. I was a social moron. And so if you were to give me an intellectual challenge, it would be a blind spot to me to think that other people couldn't do it, because I just see it. I can see the multiplication tables or whatever it is. But if you were to ask me, how do I start a conversation or talk to a girl? So, you know, it's one of those things that I think there's a certain percentage, to your point, as I tell people the same thing. Most of my content, either in a book or the podcast or a very low priced course, it's all there. But as you and I both know, like anything else, it's the execution. And when there's more at stake, it's not just about saying, I used to joke to people, well, you know what, you can buy my book. This is when I didn't know this part. I'd say, well, you can buy my book, you can pay for the online course, or you can pay me a lot and I'll private coach you and read the slides to you. And I used to joke because, you know, I thought that the only thing that they were doing is they were just lazy and didn't want to read the slides, and it wasn't, or watch the videos. And of course it wasn't that. It was like they were actually taking it so seriously. They're saying, Wade, I get how big of a deal this is. My one mistake, you've helped me identify a $10,000, $50,000, $100,000 issue. So yeah, I'll invest some money to make sure that I get that right. And so that's very important. So I just wanted to get to that one. Let's go back, if you don't mind. Step three, you talked about starting to unpack a little bit. What's that look like?
So we call it the Jenga step. You ever played the game Jenga with the wood blocks?
Yes.
Right. So you ever played Jenga and you like push on a piece that's in the middle and you think it's going to pop right out, and then the whole thing spins on you and slides across the table 2 inches, and you're like, whoa, that sucker is stuck. Well, that piece is the business owner. Okay. And if you push on that piece and try to remove the business owner from that when it's stuck, which it is on for all of us today, it's just going to tip the tower over. And they know it and they can feel it. And that's why they're resistant to all this change that we're talking about, because they know instinctually that if they push too hard on that piece, they're going to have a problem. But if you play Jenga, you know that if you remove this piece here and this piece here and this piece here, and you come back to that same piece later, what happens? Boop, pops right out.
Love that.
Okay? So we're going to adjust and do all that manipulation in step 3 so that we can remove the business owner. And I'll go fast here because I know we're put on time. Step 4, we re-leverage assets. Here's my point. You're the business owner. Your time adds value to that business. If I subtract time, I have to add back other value or else your income goes down. So there are usually spots, it could be business model tweaks. There's a long laundry list, and I'll call it a bag of tricks that we
let me jump in there. I think you said some nerds, because a lot of people say, wait, I just want to delegate. So well, hold on. If you only just delegate, well, then you still have added, you freed up time. Great. You've added expense, but you told me you didn't want your income to go down. So we still, in somewhere, we want you to do something else that kind of makes up for it. You don't have to. And again, if you can afford not to, you might say, wait, I don't need to. But yeah, it's the money's not going to come from nowhere, especially if you want good help. So yeah, helping them see those pieces. I think of something, what you mentioned struck a chord with me. So I have a program I've done I've done pretty much the same program 4 different times with one of my target audiences. And I called it 4 different things. And one of the times I called it the automatic insurance agency. It's for insurance agency owners. And that particular title was the one that got the most response, the most signups by multiples. And what was funny is some people, of course, you get this sort of catch-22. Some people don't believe it'll work. And you say, okay. And then some people say it can't work. It would cost a lot. Then they say, no, wait, it costs too much. You have all these different objections to why it would work or why it wouldn't work. But the still point I said to them, I said, I want to be really clear. Let me define automatic. Automatic is you 20%, depending, maybe 40% of what you're doing now time-wise, depending how good you get at this. It's not completely automatic because we're dealing with people. And as we know from the country song, God is great, beer is good, and people are crazy. So you can't count on people to make something completely automatic. And yet, again, they'd almost argue all 3 sides of that. And there's only 2 sides to it. And yet, because it was still difficult, but I like what I've never heard it explained this way, that right now we can't remove you. And it makes perfect sense. Right now we can't remove you from the process. But when we put some things in place, you'll naturally, in fact, you won't be needed. It'll become apparent. And I guess that's always been one of my litmus tests, if you will, to when the people start saying, well, hey, Jim, can I take that from you? And you say, oh, I was hoping to give that to you. And in my mind, I can't wait to give it to you. But when you come to me and say, I've now mastered the 5 things below that, and this is just the next thing in the list, all of a sudden this becomes less magic and woo-woo and mysticism. And it becomes just more about, okay, well, we're going to remove those pieces. Is that kind of what it looks like for you all?
Yeah, and one of the things that this is going to seem really simple, but I see most business owners really struggle with this, and it's the way that they expect people to take on work. Okay, and I have this a lot. So if we talk about, I want you to build a brick wall. Okay, the way that most, so back to there's 10 things to do, and I said it's 110. I see each brick as one thing to do, not build a wall. Okay. And so what most business owners do is they take a wheelbarrow full of bricks, they walk up to you, they dump the bricks at you, and they say, build a wall. And the problem is that's a lot of different things if you don't know anything. And everybody forgets that they didn't come out of the womb knowing this. They learned it. And especially people that are good at it. I think people that are good at stuff are the worst trainers.
Oh gosh,
You know,
yes.
Ted Williams was a horrible baseball hitting instructor. He was like, "What's wrong with you? See the ball, hit the ball. What's wrong with you?" You know,
Yep.
who was a great hitting instructor? Charlie Lau, a lifetime 237 hitter. That was a good hitting instructor because he had to work at it. He probably had to work to hit 237.
Yes.
Okay, but to me, so my analogy is, listen, get them to lay one brick, get them to lay another. So I have a simple saying that I insist that everybody live, and that is, it is only what someone can do without help that is helpful. A pile of bricks there that you just throw your hands in the air and you go, now what, boss? Now what, boss? That drives us nuts, right? I'm
Yes.
sure you've heard it. I'm sure you've done it, just like me.
Yes. And then but even worse, the owner will sometimes say, build a wall, and you'll give it. And I think of who I was when I first entered the workforce. There's a team member I work with in one of the agencies I work with who's like this, where he'll build the wall. It might not be exactly the brick wall you wanted, but he'll build it so fast and he'll say, no, but I want, and you're like, well, hold on. Now this is like a genie. Well, genie, you've got to be very clear. I want $1 million, and a bunch of those critters show up in the bar. So, no, I meant $1 million. Well, you needed to be clear. You said you wanted $1 million. Here's $1 million. And that's not quite the same thing.
Yeah, and so if they'll slow down a little bit, right, and think about it, how they were trying to master it, and really, we call it fractionalization, learning to fractionalize everything and look at it. I use the example of changing a light bulb. It's like 25 steps to change a light bulb. It's not one, it's 25 steps. You know, don't fall off the ladder, don't stand on the top thing, you know, make sure you push down the prongs all the way on the ladder, turn it counterclockwise, not clockwise. All that stuff is steps, and everyone, I'm not going to call it laziness, but at some point, if you know that it needs to be done that way in order to work, and then you choose not to do it, now it is laziness or wishful thinking or whatever. But we've had a lot of luck getting our clients to get people to accomplish work, take over work that they never dreamed other people could take over for them, by really just doing those two things. One, hang on to the Picasso work. They're never going to be able to do it. That's what's going to blow it up. Number two, let's work on it in a logical 5-step process to get rid of the easiest work first. Focus on mastery, not how much can I give to them. It's only what they can do without help that is helpful. You know, if you can fetch me coffee in the morning, that is helpful. I now don't need to do that. Cool. Great. Now let's go one further. I got 2 creams, you know.
Yes.
Whatever it would be. Right?
Okay, awesome. Cool. So do me a favor. I've got 4 more quick questions for you, but go through if you don't mind. What are steps 5 and 6?
5, we call it setting the autopilot. It's the same thing you were. How do you manage it quickly, easily, not being there? Your eyeballs aren't on the business anymore. How do you keep your finger on the pulse of the business? Step 6 really isn't a step. It's enjoy the spoils. Right? Have some fun. Do the things that you encourage them to do on Fridays.
Awesome. Cool. So, all right, a little bit of a lightning round. What does it look like and feel like to the business owner when they achieve it? I know it might look slightly different, but what are the common themes where they then come to you and say, Jim, thank you? How, like when they know either that they're on their way, that they're safely enough on their way, that they're going to get there or they're good enough there. What does that look like?
Well, usually you can measure it in hours, right? But for instance, getting out of sales can be tricky. You know, very, very large construction company, 60, $70 million. And the owner was pretty heavily entwined, you know, in that process. And that's scary, right? You start going, oh my gosh, I'm gambling $50 million of sales potentially by getting out of this. And he sent me a note last Christmas and he said, hey, I just wanted to thank you for all the good work we did together, blah, blah, blah. By the way, I'm not involved in sales anymore at all.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And you go, okay, there's a victory. I don't care how much he's working.
Right.
But yeah, so you start feeling it, right? I think that, you know, sometimes you and I don't get to hear them. They get these little victories. All of a sudden, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they handled it without me, or, you know, whatever it would be. And you need to build upon those.
Yeah, that's huge. Sometimes the victories are small. We need to, I write them down because sometimes in case people forget, say, remember a month ago, you know, you got a latte or you got a Frappuccino and you didn't want a Frappuccino, you know, just something so simple. Second question, in general, how long does it usually take to start seeing results and or reaching the finish line? I know those are 2 different things because I'm assuming some of this, of course, is managing expectations of somebody when they come in. What do you usually tell clients and what do you usually find?
Okay, I'm going to give you the it depends answer. I've seen lots of people get some really amazing results in a month, but they're certainly not half retired. You're not going to be half retired in a month. I've seen people quit on me after a month where they were like, oh my gosh, I thought I wanted to be half retired and now I'm working half the time, and they changed their definition. See, to me, 4 days a week, I've got people that want to work more than that are half retired. I just want to take Friday afternoons off. Okay, that's half retired to you? Cool, yep. You're half retired. But they'll move the bar on me. Oh my gosh, I couldn't believe I could get 15 hours back. I was working 60, now I'm working 45, good enough. Because I got people in their 30s and their 40s, that are doing this. But sometimes that will happen where they'll change the bar. But I think realistically, it's going to be 6 months to a year if you really want to spike the ball in the end zone. Okay, but that's dependent on everything from your business model, your profitability. What if I wouldn't want to be a micro brewer right now? I mean, the big one around here just started coming out with a spiked seltzer, and you go,
oh wow,
you go, that's not a good sign in my opinion. That means you're not selling enough beer. Okay, yes. Well, that's I don't even know if it's a business model problem. It's a trend problem.
Yeah,
I can't change consumer preferences.
That's a good point. Yeah, no, you got to be aware of what you can do. One of my friends says you can only do what you can do. We always talk about that.
They have great people or they have lousy people, right? They're missing a key position. Or I just had a client where one of their key people just took another job, got hired away last week. Well, that's going to impact them.
Yeah,
that's going to impact them. So, and how much they want to work it, right? How hard do they want to hit it? How much of an A personality are they? But we can always get results every month. And I think, you set the goal for 6 months to get to the end zone. If we don't make that, I think you should be prepared to go longer. But, it's a positive snowball. I'm sure it's for you too.
Yeah, I found it pretty similar. You should be able to see significant results in 90 days, definitely by 6 months. And again, maybe not depending on the situation, actually very similar. What do you enjoy most about the process?
Well, certainly you get to see these, saved marriages and, people that were literally feeling a pit in their stomach every time they thought about retirement. How am I going to be able to I've got people that are in their early 70s going, I literally can't figure out how I'm going to die at my desk. Now, I cannot figure out how I am going to, who would have figured that 30 years ago that when I started this, I'd never get to enjoy, traveling or doing anything because I'm glued to this business. I mean, it's pretty nice to deshackle those people.
That's awesome. Yeah. For me, definitely, there are times when I just get one little bit of feedback or something, and it almost feels like ducks with bread. Like I'll just keep going back as long as I get that one thing. It's some sort of feedback, and it's not always the way I'd like it. It's not always in the way I would have written it, but it's something that says something to the effect of my life is different. And it's not necessarily, well, because of you, Wade, or anything dramatic like that, but it's like, because I'm seeing things differently. I'm perceiving the world a different way. And I imagine you have some of these, the client that you only work with a short period of time, and then you don't hear from for like 10 years. And they're like, yeah. And they're doing it even more because they really got it. And on one hand, it feels almost emotionally odd because it's almost like if you gave birth to a child and at one they left and then they became like, this awesome person. Like, well, I just told them a couple good things and then they went on their own. And yet to me, that's some of the most fun ones, where I have a friend that actually came to the workshop that I did once, a 4-day workweek entrepreneur workshop. And I did it more of, hey, we'll come out, check out my stuff. He's just like, sure, I'll come. And long story short, he went from working probably 6 days a week, probably 60 hours a week, to anywhere from 2 to 3 days a week and about 30 hours, and doubles income, and is traveling with the kids more. And his kids are now between maybe 7 and 13, and just destroyed it, and in a good way, just did it so well. And it sometimes go back to him like, well, what did I tell you? Because he was ready. And so that's awesome. And then last thing, and I probably need to come up with a different way to end this. I put this question in the wrong order, but how do you know when somebody's not ready? And then what can they do that? So if somebody's listening to this and they're saying, oh man, Jim, maybe not, or they're a little fearful. Maybe that's a better way to do it, because maybe that's two parts. So how do you know when they're not ready for Jim to work with you guys? And or what would you tell that person? Not that's, oh, well, you're stupid, you should be looking at this. What do you tell that person as far as, well, hey, maybe it's not the right time? Maybe, what does that look like for you?
That's step 1 and 2, right? If they don't have a magnet, there's nothing that we can do. And to some extent, if they're not willing to look at, forget the mindsets, forget the specifics of them, okay? I always joke that sales is just really 3 steps. Do you or do you not have a problem or opportunity? Do you or do you not want to fix it? Do you think that I am the person that can help you do that? The end, right? Yeah. If we don't check those 3 boxes, we should not work together. It's a bad fit. But I can't make them have the desire. I get a lot of people that, I looked at this a year ago and now I'm ready. Now I had a 59-year-old that just, came into the program, and that's great. She's ahead of it. But when I get a 68-year-old that isn't quite ready, I had a 70-year-old. Oh, I'll think about it. And I'm like, good plan. That's what I think you should do.
Yeah. So you don't do the mortality charts closed, do you? No.
No. And I'll tell you what I feel like saying, and it's just, I don't want to be a jerk, but you start going, if you got diagnosed with cancer, you had this problem, right, that had a ticking bomb on it, would you say, let me get back to you in 3 months after I think about it? You'd be like, point me down the hall where I need to go to fix this.
Yeah. And I think that's the tough part as coaches or any agent of change, of how ready are they? Because of course, if they're not fully there, then you can get them in, you can even get the check, and then still have this person that drags along. Oh, Jim, man, thank you so much. This is, like I said, this is one of those ones I didn't have to put a lot of questions down. I just wrote a couple notes at the end because I realized I had written down no questions after our entire pre-interview, because I felt like I was like, okay, I get this. Where can people learn more about your work and what you're doing, and how can they just start diving into this to see a little bit about the model and see if perhaps you're somebody that can help them?
Lots of good stuff on the homepage of our website. You just halfretire.com, just like it sounds. You can download the blueprint that I talked about. You can actually even take a free course that goes through the 8 steps. It's not too terribly long, long enough, but not so long you won't be able to stand it. Free course, so there's lots of good resources there. Occasionally we'll do a live webinar that will, if you get on our list, you'll probably get invited to that. So I would encourage you to probably do the download, and then you'll make it onto our list if you want to get information and learn more about half retirement. Awesome,
thank you. Yeah, I listened to, and that was one before I even talked to you that solidified for me. It's like, yes, okay, we really are on the same page, and Jim could offer so much value to the audience I try to serve. Is when I listened to, I think it was like a 25 minute video to explain the process. And certainly it wasn't everything on once, but it was enough to be like, okay, this person really knows what he's talking about, and this could work. So thank you again for coming out. I'm really looking forward to sharing this with our audience. If y'all have questions, I've spoken with Jim a couple of times. He's actually as straightforward as it is. Listen to his stuff, check out his stuff. And if you have any questions, please let him know. And as always, I look forward to helping you, the audience, everybody out there, make more money, help more people in less time, do what we do best so you can better enjoy your family, your friends, and your life. Thanks for listening.